I think we were, shit, I forgot what we were doing last week. Fuck it. Let's get the ball rolling. Hey guys, this is Chris with Drop Dice. We're back again this week. So if you didn't catch it from the intro, this week we're kind of talking about how to basically keep yourself in memory of your games. Red Dice Diaries did a video called GM Tips Keeping the Memory Alive. I thought that was a great video because he does talk about some things that are kind of more directed at the GM about how to remind yourself about where the players are at, keeping the hype for your game going, and keeping that good momentum. A lot of games, if the players are really enjoying it, that stuff kind of honestly doesn't really happen because the players build their own momentum. I like his suggestions a lot. Let me first say that. And especially about like the newsletter and stuff like that. I think I'm going to probably onboard some of those ideas. And I'm going to start kind of improving my own tactics as far as keeping a game session hype in between kind of increased. I mentioned it before, I'm starting a Legend of Five Rings game as soon as my players finish up with their current 5th edition game, which has expanded and gone a little bit further than we expected. So each of these are kind of different tips. I'm also going to try out some video editing software, so kind of bear with me here. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So the first tip we have for you is to basically, this is a player tip and a GM tip. For each one of these, I'll let you know who I'm directing it to, but stick with me here. This one's player and GM tip. Take notes. You don't need to do school notes. They don't need to be elaborate. They just need to be notes that are specific to your character. And I say this with importance towards the players. Make sure that they are important to your character, not just generic game notes, because that's what your character is going to remember overall. You should put important events, even if your character doesn't necessarily care. Like, let's say that there's a side quest that's going on that you guys are doing. You should go ahead and take notes on that, even if it has nothing to do with your character. Your character has zero interest in character for that quest. They're going to remember stuff from it. So definitely take those notes and take your notes in character, because it's going to give you a reminder of who you're playing, what their personality is like, just by reading your commentary in character. For the GMs, you could do this with the NPCs when they interact with the PCs. And give them like an in-character notes, but I find that to be a little complicated. I personally just create GM notes. Okay? All right, so the second thing that we've got going for us here is player along with player notes. It's actually kind of an add-on to it, the game recap. So normally in a game, a GM will do the recap at the beginning of the game. I'm a little on the fence about what I like about that and what I don't like about it. Here's kind of the pro about it. The GM controls the tempo, and it can be set to 1 to 5 minutes. That's pretty average. The thing that I don't like about that is it's 1 to 5 minutes the players are not involved. I like the idea of the players jumping in and getting involved right away. So usually during my game recaps, it's more of a conversation. And I think I'm going to actually change that and make it entirely be player interaction. For my next game coming up, the Legend of the Five Rings story that I'm putting together. Essentially, what I'm thinking is the players can access their notes and give us a little recap in the mind of their player. So it gives you an RP warm-up, and it allows you to kind of discuss things. And then, let's say, Jeremy's character mentions some things, but Jeremy forgets some stuff because, everybody forgets some things sometimes. Miracle will insert a couple thoughts, and then of course you always have that one person who's on top of things and will remember the most minute but important detail. That happens to be Tom in my group. Tom will fill in those 2 things that everybody forgot, and then if I see anything that they've forgotten that I think is important as the GM, I will mention it again as a courtesy mention. I don't always do that, but if it's something that I think is important and their character should have taken notice of but they didn't, I will mention it. So let's move on. So next up is kind of expanding on this idea of the intro to a game. If you do happen to have a YouTube channel, or you don't, go ahead and start one. If you're already absorbing content on YouTube like mine, it's great to see new faces and for people to put out their own content, because the more opinions that are out there, the better. Off my soapbox. Now, back to the point at hand. Back to the idea of doing intros. If you do have a YouTube channel, I haven't tried it, but I think I may try it in the future. Maybe do a game recap, just a little 5-minute recap thing, to basically say what happened, hit the important notes, and post it to your YouTube channel. Now, I'm not sure if it would make sense to record and post it post-game, which I see a lot of people, like Tabletop Gaming with Juice. He does post-game recaps, which I think is a solid idea, but he puts them out after the game is done. What I'm thinking I would do to kind of change that, to get my players a little bit more involved, kind of like what Red Dice Diaries was talking about with the newsletter idea. Instead, what I do is I'd make my event for the next game, and I would release my YouTube video on the same day that I make my event, and paste that sucker right in the Google event or Facebook event, whatever the case may be. That way, you know, the players are coming in, they see the event, they have a little video to refresh their memory, and like I said, you want to keep it somewhere between 1 to 10 minutes. 10 minutes is probably a little long for a recap, but it depends on what you covered. If you covered a lot of stuff, maybe 10 minutes is appropriate. What I would suggest is scripting it out. You could have a lot of fun with it. You could play it as if you're a bard or some storyteller behind a campfire, that sort of thing, and play with some editing stuff, if you happen to be good at that. If you're bad at it like me, you will put together a video to test it and then see how things go. All right, moving. All right, so the next tip here is to increase player buy-in. I released a video yesterday that was about what I do to kind of personalize a campaign and increase player buy-in, which I shared this morning because I totally spaced and forgot to do it after I finished filming. But check that video out. Let's go back to this real quick here, though. So one of the things that you can do is incorporate things like player logs, whatever you want to call them. Essentially, you know, have the players get a chance to create an entry, a letter home, a diary entry, or a letter home, or a letter to like their patrons, that talk about what they're experiencing in character. A lot of players, this may be kind of difficult for them, and so what I've done is I'm more of like an award-based GM. I like when players do things, and I encourage buy-in. So I do that with, here's a piece of candy, here's a piece of candy. For my upcoming game, Legend of the Five Rings, I did a here's a piece of candy scenario. Basically, I showed how you get experience in the game, and then I said if you create an adventure log, a letter, or player arc, you can get 1 bonus experience. Just to kind of give you a frame of reference, this game, like 5 experience per session is pretty normal. So I'm giving you a chance to get up to 6 experience per game, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you earn such minimal experience in a game, that 1 extra experience point is worthwhile, especially if you're getting it every week because you're spending the extra time to do it. Now, this is a sneaky GM trick, and stick with me here. If you encourage your players to do these player entries, usually what will happen is they will do their letter about 2 to 3 days after your campaign is over. If your game happens to be every week, they do their entry about 2 to 3 days afterward. You put out the event for the next game about 3 to 4 days after that adventure, and then you can have like a GM recap video inside there, which will again remind your characters. So in between each game, you're going to have 2 reminders, one that the player is going to write themselves, and one that you're putting out as the GM as a video or something like that. So having 2 reminders during the week, and especially if your video is short, concise, and to the point, you're going to see a lot more player buy-in, people come to the table fresh, ready to go, and feeling awesome. Keep in mind when you do these things as a GM, like let's say you want to write an NPC letter and let the players see that, keep in mind that you are still supposed to be a fan of the players. If your bad guy is not a fan of the players, what you can do is really play that up inside the storyline. Essentially, have the bad guy's letter talk about these horrible douchebags that keep ruining his plan, and talk about how, you know, he was so close to victory, but they ruined it. That, in and of itself, because even though the bad guy is dissing on them, is kind of a pride point for players. They get to be like, yeah, we messed up his day. That was awesome. My next point here is a fortune, which is basically hero points. I allow players to get a little mechanical benefit from doing things that will increase their buy-in, increase their activity in the world. Basically, one hero point or fortune allows them to do things like make an NPC critically fail, succeed, and do a couple other things inside the game that are a little bit more dynamic to Legend of the Five Rings. For 2 points, they can cheat death or gain access to an otherwise restricted court. I also did stuff like getting followers and allies. Followers essentially are low-skilled, just NPCs like doctors, messengers, spies, that sort of thing, that don't have heroic classes, and they can be ranked up by investing even more into them. Basically, you're spending your success in life, your fortunes, to improve their own lives. And then the other one I have is allies, which is like you can make an ally of an NPC. Like, let's say I have a general that you really like in game and you would like him to be your ally. Now, allies can ask for you to do things, allies and followers can ask for you to do things on their behalf, but allies, depending on what you do, you may jilt an ally and lose that ally in game because of your RP. Allies cannot be improved. They only get bought once, essentially. And then and the reason for that is because they have player classes, and essentially they benefit from their own fortunes or luck. But the examples are, of course, your PC classes. For this game, they happen to be Bushi, Shugenja, Courtier, and Monk. There's a couple other like side tangent ones like Artisan and stuff like that that are in there. And if players are interested in that sort of thing, I'm totally down with opening those up for them. All right, let's see. Moving on. So the last tip I have for you is engage in social media or some sort of collective storage thing for your campaign. Essentially, we're at a very strong advantage with the gaming world. Even if you play in person, you can use a lot of this social media and things like that to be advantageous to your gameplay. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be using Google for my Legend of the Five Rings game. It basically is going to function as something to be a collective source for everything about the game. So when my players update their character sheets, they can throw them inside there. They can put their log entries or their blog entries or whatever you want to call them inside there. They can open up conversations both in character and out of character. I happen to have a little tag for in-character RP and then just open discussion. That way it's separate, so that my players, if they want to engage in an RP discussion when the game is not actively being played between two characters, they can do so. And me as the GM, I'm going to get updates about that, and if I feel that the conversation has gone too far or it would be more appropriate in game, I can make that call and let them know. I think a lot of the social media stuff is kind of one of the better tools. Red Dice Diaries actually brings it up inside his video about how useful it is. I'm 100% on board with that concept. So that has been our tips for this week. Thanks for bearing with me while I try out some video editing software. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you like the video edits, let me know. Like I said, today's kind of an experiment. Thanks for showing up, liking, subscribing, thumbs up, following my friend over at Red Dice Diaries, John. I'm going to include his video in the description below, so make sure you check that out. He also has some great stuff about how to run Fate, how to play Fate, how to set up a character. He's kind of a bigger Fate guy. He played in that Spider, Me, or Mates game. And he's got a lot of knowledge on that system. So if you're looking to try Fate, I would recommend his channel. His Jade Punk games are actually pretty interesting to watch through as well. Alright guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the gaming table.